All right, let's get started today then with 4C. A lot of the same topics we've been doing. We're just going to continue to master learning about the variables and quantities, writing our equations, and graphing. So the first thing we have here is what is a variable quantity and what is a constant quantity. So in your own words, is someone willing to tell me what a variable is? It does not need to be super mathematical sounding, but what's the difference between a variable and a constant? If you want to put it into the chat, you can do that too.
A variable quantity is it stays the same. It changes and the constant quantity stays the same.
Bingo. That was you, Tim, right? Good job. Okay. So a variable quantity is a quantity, just like he said, that changes. Okay. And we use a letter, often X and Y, right, to represent it. Okay, so in the past, we've seen things like he worked for 4 hours, then he worked for 9 hours, then he worked for 20 hours. That number of hours kept changing, so hours was a variable. Okay? And then the money was changing because of the hours changing. So he made $20 the first day, then he made $40. Then he made $45. That value changed, so that's a variable. And we usually use X and Y, but remember you could use A, you could use D, whatever variable, whatever letter you want to stand for a variable. And then as Tim said, a constant is a quantity that stays the same. And we don't have letters for that. That's a number in the equation that literally stays the same. So if there's always a one-time fee of $20, that 20 is a constant. I'm never changing it. I always have to include 20. If I'm always making $7 an hour, that 7 is a constant. No matter whether I'm working 10 hours or 12 hours, that I'm making 7 an hour. So 7 stays the same. Okay? So let's start by evaluating expressions. So let's just first talk about 8s plus 15. What is the variable here in 8s plus 15? S, exactly. What's a constant in 8s plus 15? 15 and 8, exactly. The numbers, those are the constants, okay? So when we're evaluating, what's changing is the S. I'm going to put a 20 in there, but the 8 and 15 stay exactly the same. So that's a constant. So we will have 8 times 20 plus 15. Take that 20 and plug it in for S. Then just make sure to follow order of operations. So we multiply first. 160, good. 8 times 20 is 160. And then plus 15 will give me 175. Good. Okay. Everybody go ahead and try 4 and 5 right now. Simplify those. And then we'll check them in 2 minutes. All right, so let's check them. For number 4, 10 and 2 are our constants. M is the variable. So we're changing M to be a 4, but the 10 and the minus 2 stays as is. Make sure here you follow order of operations. What am I going to do first? Good. So this is really saying 10 minus 8. Don't do 8 times 4, right? So 10 minus 8, which gives me 2. Okay, for number 5, 1/2 and 30 are constants, and the r is my variable, so that r changes to a 10 that I'm substituting in. And then we simplify. Good, half of 10, right? Or 1/2 times 10 is 10 over 2, which is 5. And then 5 plus 30 is 35. Any questions with simplifying? We've done that a handful of times. We're all good there? Okay, now let's go look at an equation that we're going to have to build. Okay, so we're going to use this next information for like the rest of these questions. Okay, so let's read the bold carefully. You want to save money for college. You already saved $500, and then you're able to save $75 each week. Okay? If you continue to save money at this rate, what will your total savings be after 3 weeks? So what do we think here? What are we going to do? Tell me, are we going to do multiplication, division, adding, subtraction? What do we think, Max? We're going to multiply. So let's start with that. What are we going to multiply? Bingo. We make $75 each week. So that 75 is not just a one-time deal. That 75 is going to get multiplied by however many weeks I'm working. And on number 6, we're working 3 weeks. Is that all the money? What else do I have in my account already?
500.
Exactly. So we're going to add 500, but just once. I don't make 500 every 3 weeks. I already have that. So we will multiply 75 times 3 gives me 225. And then we'll add 225 to 500, and that gives me 725. And remember, we like to write those in a complete sentence. So if you continue, what will your total savings be? So your total savings will be $725. Make sure to put that dollar sign. Okay? You guys try number 7 right now. 10 weeks. How much money will we have after 10 weeks? When you have an answer, you can put it into the chat. For number 7. Yep, for number 7. All right, we got lots of answers here. Good. Most of those are correct. Let's make sure we're just double checking. So for this one, for 10 weeks, remember we're multiplying 75 times 10 plus the $500 that we already have. So make sure there 75 times 10 is $750. Then plus our 500. And that gives us $1,250, otherwise known as $1,250. So your total savings will be, oopsies, $1,250. Okay. Any questions there? No problem. Gotcha. Okay. So number 8 is really similar, but when we're reading these problems, we have to be super careful because number 8 this time says 6 months. So are we just going to plug in a 6? No, right? We were plugging in weeks. So we need to make sure to convert 6 months to weeks. So the hint is that there's 4 weeks in a month. So how many weeks is this actually? 24, exactly. So let's first do that 6 times 4 gives me 24 weeks. Now that we have those weeks all settled, we can go back to doing what we just did in 6 and 7, right? And that is to do 75 per week. So 75 times what? Good, 24. And then we still have that $500 to add. So you'll see problems like this, guys, throughout the semester where you need to make sure you're really paying attention to the labels and not just getting in the swing of things of like, oh, I'm just going to keep plugging in numbers, okay? Look for those labels. So 75 times 24 gives me 1,800. And then we add the 500. So the total savings will be $2,300. Any questions? All right. So use a complete sentence to explain how. So what did we do every time? We started with 75, but we don't want to say that. So what does 75 represent? Per week. Good. Okay. So I multiplied the amount saved per week. So that was the 75. And what did we multiply it by? We multiplied it by 3, 10, and then 24. What do those represent? The amount of weeks, exactly. So I multiplied the amount saved per week by the number of weeks. And then, what did we do? And so instead of, yes, that's what we did. We then added 500, but I don't want to use numbers. So exactly. And then added the amount that was already saved. So when you guys are doing these explaining problems, first, yes, think about what numbers you used and then ask yourself, well, wait a second. What does that 500 mean? I'll use words for that instead. Or what does that 75 mean? I'll use words for that instead. Okay? Good? All right. Now, let's look at 10, 11, 12. If you continue to save at this rate, how long until we have $2,000? So now, last problems, we were looking to figure out the total amount of money, and they gave us the weeks. This time, they're giving us the money, and we need to find the weeks. So what are we going to do?
Divide.
Yeah, the opposite of what we were doing, okay? So let's start with this. I'm going to start with pretty much like an equation, right? We were using $75, and we multiplied $75 times the amount of weeks. Well, this time around, that's what we're looking for. We don't know the weeks, so I'm going to put X there. Is everybody on the same page as me right now? Number 10, we're all good? Okay. And then we always had that $500, and it's going to equal the amount of money that I want to have in total. Okay? Does that make sense? So now I'm going to solve that. How do I solve it? Good. So we'll do our opposite of what we were doing. Subtract from both sides, right? Keep it nice and organized. So 75 times X will then equal 1,500. And now divide. $20? Perfect. So X will equal 20. So what does that mean? It will take, what does this mean? 20 apples? 20 weeks. Good. Everybody at home, we doing okay? Sorry, Moses, I'm just seeing your message. But yes, you can, Moses. Just try to keep up with us if you didn't already go. All right. Number 11 and 12 are very similar. Why doesn't everybody give 11 and 12 a try? I'll start 11 for us. Again, $75 per week. We don't know how many weeks, but we do always have the $500, and this time we want it to equal $8,000. Okay, so go ahead, solve 11, and then also set up 12 and solve 12. You can even go on to 13 if you feel confident. And we'll talk about these in like 2 minutes or so. How are we doing? Do we need more time with 11 and 12? Yeah, 12 too. Give you guys a little more time. You can start checking your answers though as I write them. So for number 11, did you get 100?
Yeah.
Yes, good. So 100 weeks for number 11. For number 12, again, same deal. 75x plus 500 is going to equal 11,750. Subtract our 500. 75x equals 11,250. And then we divide that by 75. And what'd you guys get? Good. X equals 150. Any questions with any of these values? Okay, I'm going to slide it up just a little bit, but they're all still there. So with our complete sentence here of explaining how, we're going to use those same words from the front, but instead of multiplying and adding, we are subtracting and dividing. So I subtracted the 500 first, right? But 500 means the amount already saved. I subtracted the amount already saved from the total. And then I divided by 75. But I don't want to say I divided by 75. What's that 75 mean again? $75 is the amount earned per week. And then that tells you the number of weeks. Any questions? Okay, so now it says, let's fill out this table. Okay, slide it down a little in case it's 13. So our labels, first tell me guys, what always comes first? What coordinate? X or Y? X. So this first column is going to represent X. Tell me, looking back at our work, what was our X? Even look right here, right? On number 12. Exactly. X was 150 and 150 represented weeks. So our label here is the number of weeks. And that unit is simply just weeks. Or you could say time and weeks. And then what was our results always represented? What was the other variable we were working with? The number of weeks was changing, and what else was changing? The money, the amount of money that we had, right? The amount of money saved. And that label is dollars. So this is super important that we copy our numbers right. How are we filling in this chart? Based upon your calculations from before. So let's start with the first page. That was with the 3, 10, and 24. So if I go to the first page, for 3 weeks, I made $725. What was it for 10 weeks? $1,250? So $1,250. And then let's stick with that first page. So for 24 weeks, we made $2,300. So I'm going to jump down to where it says 24. That'll be $2,300. Uh-oh. It's not letting, there we go. Okay. The second page of our calculations gives us the other values. So when it was $2,000, how many weeks was that? 20. Good. Is everyone seeing where we're just getting this info? Okay. For $8,000, it was 100, right? Question 11. And then $11,750 was 150 weeks. Okay? So please make sure right now that you have that chart copied correctly. Anyone need more time? Okay, so now we're going to do 15 before we head to lunch. And then after lunch, you're going to come back and we're going to graph my data. So let's practice our chart here with 15. Notice the first is our time, which was our weeks. Again, that is our X variable, our independent variable. And the second is my total savings. Again, look at my chart we had before. We had our time and we had our savings. So those match up. That's my Y variable. What is our lower bound always going to be for now? 0. Good. So we can pop zeros right on in there. My upper bound is my highest. So let's start with time. Let's go back to my time chart. That was our X, number of weeks. And what's the highest number I see there? 150, exactly. So I'm going to put 150 for my upper bound. For total savings, that was the second column, right, where we see money saved. And what's the highest number there? Bingo, 11,750. So we're going to put that as the upper bound for total savings. Okay, so again, our lower bound is 0 because we can't have a negative amount of money and time for this problem. So it's 0. And then our upper bounds we find from our table and look at the highest values. All right, who knows? How do we find our intervals? How about someone at home? You guys are being awfully quiet.
You count the lines in the chart and you divide the upper bound by that.
Awesome.
If it's not a good, like if it doesn't go in even, then you just find a different value that would fit better that's close to it.
Bingo. Excellent explanation. So we're going to count how many lines are on my graph. And I believe there's still 20 for this one. Yeah, there's 20. So we're going to take our upper bound like Tim said. So I'm going to do my work over here. That upper bound was 150 and I'm going to divide it by 20. 150 divided by 20 gives me 7.5. Do you guys like to count by 7.5s? No. So we're always going to round which way? Down or up? Up. And you can round it to 8 if you want. Or what is 7.5 relatively close to rounding up that's a really nice number to count by?
10.
Yeah. Okay, right? You guys know how to do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. That's super easy, right? If you chose 8, that's okay. So underneath here, I'm going to write either 8 or 10. For all of us, let's do 10. Okay? But if you chose 8, you would not have been marked wrong. Okay? You would just be counting by 8, then 16, then 32. The bell's going to ring in a minute. Please, let's finish this last line here, okay? So now for the upper bound for savings, I do the same thing, but for the interval for savings, I take the upper bound, which was 11,750. And again, I'm dividing by 20. 20 is not just that I always do. It's because there's 20 lines on this graph. Okay, one moment. So when I do that, I get 587.5. Do you like counting by that number? No. What should I round that up to? 600. Yeah, I like 600 much better. Okay? So when we come back from lunch, what are we going to do? On the bottom axis, what are we counting by? Yes, what did we say we're counting by? Tens, exactly. And up and down, we're going to count by 600. Okay? All right, have a good lunch. We will see you when you are back, and then you will finish that graph.